Chapter 14. Disobedient Warriors. The messenger received a letter from one of his uncles, Al-Abbas, who had remained in the city. Al-Abbas warned that the Quraysh were amassing a larger army along with their allies to attack the followers again. This time their forces were 3,000 in number. Plus they would bring some of their musicians and women along to cheer the men on in battle. The messenger had a dream that he was wearing an impenetrable coat of mail and riding a ram. He interpreted that the coat of mail was Medina. The messenger's preference was to position his army defensively within Medina when the next battle occurred. Meanwhile, the younger followers voiced a more aggressive strategy to meet the Quraysh outside of Medina. Given that the followers were now 1,000 in number and outfitted with chainmail and other spoils of war from Badr, the messenger inclined toward this approach to go out instead of staying within. The messenger addressed the followers before their Friday afternoon prayer, promising them victory with conditions. If you are patient and you do not waver and flee from the battlefield and obey me in what I command. The messenger, commander-in-chief of the followers, then put on 2 coats of armor, his helmet, his sword, his bow, and his spear. He emerged from his house ready for war. The followers, getting ready for battle, realized that it had been the messenger's preference to stay in Medina during the fight. They said to him, "If you want to stay in Medina, then we will stay within." The messenger responded resolutely. Once a messenger puts on his armor, he does not take it off until he goes to the battlefield. A man whose son fell at the Battle of Badr suited up for the upcoming encounter against the army of the Quraysh. That night, while sleeping, he saw his son in a garden beneath which rivers flowed, surrounded by lush trees and indescribable beauty. "Come," said the son, calling his father from paradise, "and join me." The father awoke, inspired, and hurried to share his dream with the rest of the army as it prepared to meet the oncoming forces. Just before the army left Medina, another man approached the messenger and confided, "It is my wedding night, and I don't want to delay it. Would you allow me to come later, and I will catch up in the morning?" The messenger gave him permission to do so. The newlywed bride and groom spent the night together. The bride saw a dream that there was an open door to paradise, and her new husband walked through it. She tried to follow him, but the door shut as she hurried behind her love. The bride stirred and woke with a lurch as she realized that her husband would soon be martyred in battle. In the early morning hours, the two of them purified themselves with water and prayed. Afterward, she grabbed him, and they slept together a second time. The man managed to get up and leave to catch up with the army. He would be killed in battle later that day. The messenger and the army had marched to Mount Uhud, which peaked at an elevation of 3,533 feet. The Quraysh had arrived and were destroying the followers' crops down below. One of the clan leaders, allied with the messenger, expressed his frustration with the military strategy of facing the Quraysh outside of Medina. He decided to cowardly desert the messenger and the army, walking away with 300 men. The followers asked the clan leader, "Why are you doing this?" The clan leader retorted, "There is not going to be a war. This will come to nothing." The messenger was down to a 700-man army, outnumbered by a factor of more than 4 to 1. It was even greater than the initial disparity at Badr. The messenger set the army into ranks in front of Mount Uhud. He ordered 50 archers to stand at the mountain top, instructing, "Keep the Qurayshi cavalry away from us with your arrows, and don't let them come against us from the rear, whether the battle goes in our favor or against us. Whatever happens, keep to your places so that we cannot be attacked from your direction, even if you see us being slain or booty being taken." The messenger then held up his sword and said, "Who will use this sword with its right?" Several of the followers responded enthusiastically, hoping to embrace the honor. One of the men who rose up was Abu Dujana, who was known to be fearless in battle. He used to wear a red turban during war, which many called the turban of death, because wherever they saw it, the opposition died. The messenger passed over the other eager soldiers and handed his sword to Abu Dujana. When the Battle of Uhud began, the followers killed several of the Qurayshi nobles. The Quraysh were tired after journeying from the city to Mount Uhud. One of the men who vied unsuccessfully for the sword of the messenger looked over at Abu Dujana's path and saw the red turban rapidly advancing, taking out Qurayshi forces. He understood that the messenger had picked wisely. From the messenger's family, Aisha and Fatima were present during the battle, caring for the wounded and giving the followers water. As they usually did in public, they were dressed modestly, including headscarf. On the other side, a Qurayshi woman named Hind, wife of Abu Sufyan, was beating her drum, egging on her men, and reciting poetry. If you advance, we hug you. Spread soft rugs beneath you. If you retreat, we leave you. Leave and no more love for you. Abu Dujana said, I saw someone urging the enemy on, shouting wildly, and I made for him. But when I lifted my sword against him, he screamed, and I saw that it was a woman, Hind. I respected the messenger's sword too much to use it on a woman. The messenger's uncle Hamza also fought with great bravery and was inflicting heavy casualties on the Quraysh. A Qurayshi slave had been instructed by his master and by others before the battle to kill Hamza. This slave said, I was watching Hamza while he was killing men with his sword. I aimed my spear until I was sure it would hit the mark and hurled it at him. He came on toward me, but collapsed and fell. I left him there until he died. Then I came and took back my spear. Then I went back to the camp because I did not want to kill anyone but him. My only aim in killing him was to gain my freedom. Sometime after Hamza was killed, Hind abused his body and did something unthinkable. She ripped out his liver and attempted to eat it. Suffering heavy losses, the Qurayshi army started to withdraw and run away from the battlefield. They left behind them valuable weapons, animals, and all types of booty in their wake, laying invitingly to be collected off the battlefield. Seeing this from a perch on Mount Uhud, many of the archers descended from their positions and went after the booty. The leader of the archers confronted the men, warning them not to disobey the messenger's order, but many abandoned their post and went to the prized Qurayshi goods. The Qurayshi cavalry was hidden in a pass just around the corner of Mount Uhud. They saw that the archers had left their positions and immediately broke into a gallop, entering the battlefield from behind the mountain. Just as the hooves of the war horses thundered into the battlefield, the swords of the cavalry took down the stray archers. The bowmen fell, and the momentum of the battle started to shift. A Qurayshi warrior exclaimed in the chaos, I am going to kill the messenger. This man charged toward the messenger and the followers. He took out his sword and killed the follower who he believed to be the messenger, but actually was not. The Qurayshi warrior started to shout loudly, the messenger has been killed! The messenger has been killed! Some of the followers now started to withdraw from the battle, feeling that it would be better to fortify Medina. One of the more courageous followers said, Brothers, if the messenger has been killed, what will your lives be worth without him? Don't think about living or dying. Fight for the sublime. Get up and die the way the messenger did. Inspired, several of the followers returned to the battle. Some of them were martyred. Meanwhile, the messenger was actually still alive and being defended by some of the most ardent followers. He was wounded on the cheek, his tooth was chipped, and his face was covered with blood. One of the followers, Abu Talha, incurred 70 wounds, shielding the messenger from the Qurayshi battle attacks. When the messenger raised his head to look at the enemy, Abu Talha implored, O messenger of the sublime, let my parents be sacrificed for your sake. Please don't raise your head and make it visible, lest an arrow of the enemy should hit you. Let my neck and chest be wounded instead of yours. The messenger would later call Abu Talha a walking martyr, as he survived the Battle of Uhud despite being so severely injured. The red turbaned Abu Dujana also shielded the messenger with his body and was hit with many arrows intended for the messenger. One of the followers had created a pit covered by grass in advance. Close to the end of the battle, the messenger inadvertently fell through the pit and lost consciousness, in addition to having lost a lot of blood. The messenger and the followers eventually retreated into Mount Uhud. Although Abu Talha had incurred an unfathomable number of wounds, he carried the injured messenger up the mountain. Sensing that they had won the battle, Abu Sufyan shouted to his remaining Qurayshi forces, "Victory in war goes by turns. Today, in exchange for Badr." The messenger told Umar to respond. Umar shouted back, "You are a liar. This is not for Badr. You have no master. The Sublime is the Most High and Most Gracious. We are not equal. Our dead are in paradise, and your dead are in hell." The followers suffered 70 casualties from this major battle, and almost everyone else was wounded in some way. Many of the Quraysh also suffered wounds. The next day, the messenger had only the followers who had fought at Uhud return to the battlefield to chase away any remaining Quraysh who were still present outside of Medina. The followers also lit fires at a distance, which made their numbers look much larger than they actually were, striking fear into the hearts of opposition scouts. The messenger found the body of his uncle Hamza and said, "There will never be a moment as sad for me as this." The Sublime revealed, "Never think of those who have been killed in the cause of the Sublime as dead. Rather, they are alive with their master."